Hello class, let's discuss 3 different ways to put holes in our objects. We only want to do this if we need to see a hole all the way through the model and that model has thickness. If it's a single plane, then we can get away with doing a hole via texturing using an alpha map in a transparency map. All right, so I'm going to go to the multicut tool. The first method I'm going to discuss here is chamfering a vertex. So in order to do that, let's say I want to put a hole through this. I'm going to create a couple, whoops. I'm going to create some edges like this. And for this method, we would want a vertex to be where the center of our hole is going to go. So in this case, let's just say I want it right through the center. And I'm going to select this vertex and the opposite one, like so. And then I will chamfer them, which is another way of saying beveling. If you bevel or chamfer a vertex like this, it's going to split it into 4. Okay, depending on, this is a cube, so this is all equidistant, but depending on the model that you're doing this to, these might be far apart or not equidistant to each other, and that's okay. So once we've done that, we split it into 4. I'm going to select these 4 verts and these back 4 verts. Make sure those are the only ones selected. Then I will go to Edit Mesh, Circularize. I'll click on that. And then where it says Add Divisions, I'm going to add 2 divisions. Now you can see we have this here. We can either select all these verts and scale it just in the 2 directions, or we can go over here to this radial offset and kind of play around with the initial size of this hole. Let's say I want something like this. Then I'll go to face mode, select these 2 faces, and I can either delete these and select the edges. If you have clean topology and there aren't any errors, you can also just select these 2 faces and then click on the bridge tool. The icon's up here. You can also go to your modeling toolkit and find bridge in here. Now you can see I've created a hole all the way through this. Next, we are left with 4 n-gons. Depending on your output, for example, if you're going to do 3D printing and you're trying to put a hole in something, like a simple hole, you could just leave it like this, right? If you're doing some sort of rendering, like a still render, you could also just leave it like this. If you're going to put this into like a game engine, right, or for real time, we're going to want to clean up this topology, right? Especially if we are going to show it in like a portfolio and show wireframes and all of that. If this is a hard surface object, right, we can have triangles and we can clean it up that way. It also depends on if you're going to use subdivision in your model. So let's just say we're going to keep this very low poly and we just need to clean up the n-gons. What we can do is use the multicut tool, and I can bring edges to close this off. So I have a quad here, a triangle, and a quad. And I could do that to, half of this. I could turn symmetry on for the object, right? Or I could just work my way around, or I could do half of this, delete the other half, and then mirror it. Whatever is most comfortable for you. But essentially, we could get 4 sides looking like this, right? If you're in my class and we are doing a high poly to low poly workflow, meaning that we want this to be subdividable, doing what I just did will make it so that you're not going to easily be able to subdivide this. So if I press 3 for smooth preview, we can see that this collapses in on itself, and we don't want that, right? What we actually need are like edges, right? Edge loops, supporting edge loops, so that when this is subdivided, it doesn't collapse on itself, right? And we can easily get those edge loops on this interior ring, right, by selecting this outer edge, bevel it, turn chamfer off, and reduce the fraction. Now we have supporting edge loops on either side. And you can see if I hit 3, it's for a smooth preview, it's maintaining that hardness, which is what we want, right? We can do that same trick for the exterior here, where we can sort of force edges to connect themselves using that bevel trick. So I'm going to select this border, and we don't want to collapse these edges in on a corner where it's going to, like where the shape is changing, right? We want to triangulate on a flat portion of the model so that when we subdivide it, it's not creating pinching. So I've selected all these border edges or all the edges on that turn, then I'll hit bevel and then chamfer off. Now you can see I have edge flow that wraps around, which is what I want. And I'll turn the fraction down like this. Right, and then we can get our, you can see it's holding on to that. However, you may run into some challenges subdividing this like further, or not challenges, just it'll take you a while. Let's take a look at one practice we can use to avoid this issue. If we get our supporting edge loops in first before the hole, if we need to smooth this, it will make things easier. So for example, in this shape, I can just do this real quick. Right now I have, right, I can press 3 and it doesn't collapse on itself. And then I can use that same trick where I drop an edge loop so that I have a vertex where I want the hole to go. And let's just refresh ourselves. We can bevel this or chamfer it, right? Select these and only those. Edit mesh, circularize, choose subdivisions, choose how large it's going to be, select the two opposing faces and bridge them, right? Then let's take these edges and we'll bevel these, chamfer off, reduce the fraction, right? And then I could go through and either, if I've done it this way, I could just go straight to doing this if there aren't going to be any other details along these flat faces. If there will be more modeling occurring, like in here on these flat faces, then I'd want to instead close it off more like this on each side. Right, like edge loops. So we get something like this. And then I could use the snap tools, vertex snap, to line this up. Oops. So select the direction, hold V, middle mouse click and drag over the vert that you want to line that up to, right? If you're, I wasn't thinking about it, but you could also use, like over here, let's say I want to go up, I can hold Control and Shift to get a 90-degree turn, and then right click, right? Like this, so I don't have to do any snapping later. So if there will be more surface details on a subdivided model, then you could start like this and clean it up later. If there won't be surface details or like model details, then we could do sort of this from here. Let's take a look and do the same method on a model that's already being worked on. All right, here's a knife that I'm modeling, and let's take a look at this blade. This is a work in progress, but it will show us generally what I'm talking about. There's some topology things I need to fix on this, but yeah, I'm still working on it. Let's say I want to put a hole right through here. I could use that same technique that I just taught, where I grab the multi-cut tool and create like a vertex where I want the hole to go. So let's say I want it to go here, go to vertex mode, select the two, right? Bevel. You can see this is what I'm talking about, where the verts are not equidistant, but same thing, edit mesh, circularize, two subdivisions, whoops, radial offset, and bridge, and then I would just clean up in the same fashion as before, right? So if you're in my class and you're doing the drill press assignment, this is a way you could get a quick hole in something. All right, let's look at the next method. For the drill press assignment, many of you have tables that are like this. Maybe they don't have diagonal holes, right? Maybe they're just straight. But most of them have holes like this in the actual like work surface of the drill press, and then the feet often have these slots or something similar for further attachments. And this next method will be, I'm going to cover how you, like another way you could do this. Let's start with doing these feet here. So instead of punching a hole, I'm just going to create a new scene. Instead of punching a hole through a model, we could actually start our model with creating that hole and working from there. So those feet, let's look at our reference image again, right? They have this sort of T shape to them. So we could create that first. So I'll just start off. I'm going to do this very loosely just to demonstrate the point, but essentially I'll create the shape I need by, oops, taking these, beveling them to split them apart. Let's go like this, and then I'll drop edge loops here. Let's spread these out a little bit, and now I've got this, or actually I also need something like that. And I could also just now delete all the faces but the top, and delete those. Now you see I'm just left with this hole, right? And what I could do further is just, I'd utilize the reference. Maybe I have an image plane or something, but essentially scale this out to the edge of the foot, right? Like this edge over here. Then move this to wherever the center is going to be, right? Then I could take this and mirror it, cut geometry off, bounding box, make sure this is on X or whatever axis you have it on. This needs to be, most of the time, this merge threshold needs to be turned down if your border is straight. Then I'll have something like this. I can tweak, I would want to tweak the shape of this and the scale to match, but once I'm done with that, I could take this whole thing in object mode and extrude it, right, and give it the thickness that it needs. And from here, I can start getting supporting edge loops so that it's ready for subdivision, right, and getting the overall shape. So that's one method. And the next technique I'm going to show you is pretty much the same, but let's look at something a little more complex like this oval shape here, and how we could do this. So we can create a pipe. I have my pipe right here in the poly modeling shelf. By default, it is not there. You can go to create polygon primitives and it's located right here. If you want it in your shelf, you can hold Control and Shift at the same time and then click on your mouse. It'll show up on the far right of your shelf, and then you can middle mouse click and drag and move that around, right, and put it over here. Some of these I don't actually use, and I've been meaning to do this forever. So like the cone is pretty much worthless in my opinion, at least for game art. There are better ways to get that shape. So I'll delete that. Same with this disc. And I guess I'll keep the rest of these. Okay, so I'll create the pipe, and let's scale this pipe up so I can see it. Poly pipe. In here, I can change like the radius and height and thickness, right? So radius and thickness are radius, thickness, and subdivisions along the axis are the most important for the pipe. Because this is going to be smooth later, I'm just going to keep it at 20. I want that oval shape, so I'm going to I'm going to select these edge loops here and bevel them like so it splits those apart, and that way I can move these faces the way I want to without causing problems. I'm going to go ahead and select these bottom faces here and get rid of them. Let's scale this down just a bit. I'll go to face mode, and let's select all of these faces and just move them, right, like this. So you can see I'm getting that oval shape that we have. going to center the pivot by clicking up here. I'm going to scale this down a bit. And let's utilize the grid as, like, let's say that's going to be the size of our overall table, right? So that'll help me determine a few things, like how large this should be and how long it should be. I can always grab these verts or faces and pull them out. I'm going to rotate this. I'll hold J and step snap this until I get 45 degrees, right? There it is. Or I could come over here to rotate Y and hit 45. I'm going to go to my top view by hitting spacebar and zooming out. And let's move this somewhere like this, just roughly. Great. Next, I'm going to, actually, let's go to the top view. I'll hit spacebar to get there. I'm going to move the pivot. So I'll press D. I've just unlocked the pivot. I'm going to click on this square. So that means I can move in the Z and the X axis, right? Then I'll hold X for grid snapping and middle mouse click and drag over top of the center of the grid. Then I'll hit D again. And now you can see I can rotate around like that. I'm going to select this and freeze the transformations. So now this is all zeroed out in 111. Now that the pivot point has been moved, I can select this in object mode and go to edit and click on the option box next to duplicate special. I want to make copies of this, and here where it says rotate, I need these are always X, Y, and Z, right? X, Y, Z. So along the Y, I'm going to change this to 90, right? Because I need 4 of these, and 360 divided by 4 is 90. Number of copies, I already have 1, so I need 3 more, and then I'll hit copy, right? Now I've spread those out equidistant, and that's how we're going to do this in a second. I forgot a step here that'll make this simpler. So I'll close this for now, and we could clean it up from here, but actually what I'm going to do is I'll take this and scale it in a little bit. And then I'm going to take these edges here and Control E to extrude, W, and I'm going to move them out, press R and scale them flat. And then I can hold X and grid snap it like so. I'm going to take these, again, Control E, W, move this out, scale it in, hold X, grid snap, and I can get into the top view if I really want to get that perfect. Let's take all of these, Control E, W, move out, R, flatten it, move out further. I can hold X to, again, grid snap. Let's take all of these, Control E, W, R, W, hold X, grid snap. Then I want to look at sort of the general topology of what's going on here. Overall, this is going to work just fine for like subdivision. What I would like is, actually no, that should be good. So let's check this, and now that we've done this, we can go ahead and go to edit and duplicate special. And let's, because I didn't line this up exactly right, let's go over here. So let's select this, press D to unlock the pivot. I'll hold V and vertex snap this here, and then D again to lock it in place, and then I'll grid snap it here by holding X. You could also take all of these and grid snap it up to the center, which is what I was thinking of doing before. Let's take these and hold X, grid snap it, take these, hold X, and grid snap it. So when we're done with this, it's going to be ready for subdivision, but it will not be optimized for the low poly, right? So, but the first step is getting it ready for subdivision and doing the high poly. All right, now that I fixed that, I can duplicate special, and that's going to duplicate it all. Then I could select all of these, mesh, combine, or you could go over here and select them all and hit combine. Now they're the same piece. I need to weld them. Right now you can see that these verts are not actually connected, right, when I want them to be. So now that they're combined, I can go to edit mesh, merge, and turn this distance threshold up until they all merge. I was able to see that quickly. See how I have this border edge turned on? If you don't have that on and you'd like to turn it on, which I recommend you do, you can do so by going to display, polygons, and click on border edges. There's also in our reference, if we go back to that, right, there's a hole in the center. So I can do that same trick as I did before, where I take this, bevel, select these, edit mesh, circularize, add 2, right? Then I can come on here, delete this, and then I need to clean this up. I also forgot to scale this, so I'll just do it now like this. Let's say it's going to be that big. Use your reference, right? Then let's clean this up. So I'll hold Control and Shift at the same time with the multi-cut tool to get that sort of 90-degree lock, and clean these up. Getting rid of all of these n-gons, having quads only at first. There we go. Once you've completed all that, we can do that same trick where I select this whole thing in object mode, hit Control E, and then drag this up to give it thickness. And from here, we can do things like take these corners and bevel them and repair the n-gons. But following it in this way will be easier to get good results than it would be trying to create the whole piece and then cut a bunch of holes through it. Yeah. There we go. Now I have good edge flow around that. Great. All right, let's look at the final method that I covered in class. The final method I covered in class is the Boolean method, and this involves creating multiple pieces, and then you're able to punch holes through other pieces. Doing this is fine. However, it does mean that you need to do generally more cleanup, and you need to be more thoughtful about how you approach the Boolean. That is, if you topology is important, and for whatever it is you're doing. For my class, it is important, right? So let's say we're going to create something similar to this. Let's just do one. At first, I could create a cylinder. Let's scale this up. And let's split it like that. Then I can select all of these and move them out. And we want this piece to be, you know, like thicker than this piece because we're going to punch a hole with it. So I'll take this and then rotate it 45 degrees and move it. I'll center the pivot, and let's scale it down just a bit. So make sure that it goes all the way through, right? Then I'm going to select this piece, hold Shift, then this piece. Then I would go Mesh, Booleans, and Hole Punch, and you'll see it's going to punch a hole through here. And in here, we can change like the order of the models. So for example, if you selected them in the wrong order, you can drag these. You can also change whether it's doing a hole punch or whether it's a union or an intersection, which intersection is, yeah, I've had some bugs recently with like differences in intersections, but hole punch seems to be working pretty well, although it looks like it cuts right through it. So I guess let's use, if it has thickness on the model, let's use like difference instead. Yeah, so from here you can see we have a giant n-gon here and here, and it needs to be cleaned up, right? Maybe we only do a quarter of it, and then we use the multi-cut tool to do it. So I find that Booleans are best in one of two circumstances. One, the hole that you're cutting out is quite complex, right? That it's a modeling project in and of itself, getting that hole to work, and that hole may not cut all the way through the model. Maybe it's just, scoops into the model and removes part of it. So that's an excellent use case for Booleans, right? If it's more complex than this shape and has different depths to it, you could use a Boolean. If your model is not like a flat model like this, and instead it has like curves on it, like a weapon, that's been milled in a really complex fashion or something, then Booleans could also be a good solution there too. That being said, even in those use cases, right, we need to have a good understanding of topology and edge flow so that if we are subdividing it, it doesn't collapse or pinch in on itself. Yeah, all that good stuff. Anyway, hope this helps. Thanks. Catch you later.